Have you ever given everything you had to someone? Your time, your patience, your most honest and unguarded self, only to feel them pulling further away the harder you tried to hold them close? Have you ever bent yourself into shapes you barely recognized, changing your words, your habits, and your silences, all in the quiet and desperate hope that one day they would finally look at you the way you had always looked at them? Have you ever stayed in something that was slowly emptying you because leaving felt like giving up? And you believed with everything in you that if you just loved them a little harder, a little longer, a little more perfectly, they would eventually feel what you felt. If yes, then this story is for you. Once upon a time, in a quiet village surrounded by open meadows and a long winding road that connected it to the towns beyond the hills, there lived a young man named Adam, a gentle and warm-hearted carpenter whose hands could build beautiful things from simple wood, and whose heart had always loved deeply, honestly, and without any reservation or condition. Adam had loved a woman named Lena for 3 long years, a bright and restless woman who moved through the village like weather, sometimes warm and present and filling every room with light, and other times cold and distant and completely unreachable without any explanation that Adam could ever fully understand or prepare himself for. He told himself that her coldness was just her nature, that her silences were not rejection but simply the way she was built, and that the moments of warmth she gave him between the long stretches of distance were proof enough that something real existed between them and was worth every difficult and confusing day that came with it. So he chased quietly and persistently and without dignity. He rearranged his days around her moods. He swallowed his needs to make space for hers. He apologized for things that were not his fault and explained himself for choices that needed no explanation. And every time she pulled away, he ran a little faster and gave a little more, convinced that the answer to her distance was always more of him. But Lena never came closer, and the more Adam gave, the more ordinary his giving became to her, until his love was something she received the way you receive air, without gratitude, without awareness, and without any real understanding of what it would feel like if it were suddenly gone. One quiet evening, after Lena had canceled their plans for the 3rd time in a single week without an apology or an explanation, Adam sat on the low stone steps outside his workshop with his head in his hands and a heaviness in his chest that had no clean or simple name, feeling for the first time the full and honest weight of how much of himself he had spent on someone who had never once asked him the price. His neighbor, an older woman named Clara, who had lived alone in the house beside his for as long as he could remember, and who had watched the whole 3 years pass from behind her garden wall with the quiet and patient eyes of someone who understood love in a way that only time and loss can teach, came and sat beside him without being asked and without saying anything for a very long while. When Adam finally spoke and told her everything, Clara listened without interrupting, and when he finished, she rose slowly and walked him to the edge of her garden where a tall and beautiful rose bush grew against the old stone wall, its flowers full and deeply colored and unmistakably alive with care and attention. "I planted this rose 10 years ago," she said in a calm and unhurried voice, "and in the beginning I made the mistake of planting it against the wall that faced away from the sun, because I loved that corner of the garden and I wanted the rose to be there where I could always see it easily. And no matter how much water I gave it, no matter how carefully I tended it, it grew thin and pale and leaned desperately toward a light it could never fully reach." She looked at Adam with steady and serious eyes. "So I moved it, not because the rose had failed and not because the care I gave it was wrong, but because some things cannot bloom where they are not naturally met. And no amount of effort or devotion can replace the one simple thing they were always built to need." She placed her hand gently on the wall and continued, "Lena is not a bad person, Adam, but she is not your son, and you have been pressing yourself against a wall that faces the wrong direction for 3 years, pouring everything you have into a space where your love cannot fully open. And the saddest part is not that, she does not value you. It is that you have watched yourself grow thin and pale, and you called it devotion. Adam stood in that garden for a long time after Clara went back inside, looking at the rose and feeling those words move through him. Slowly and with a weight that was both painful and deeply clear, the kind of clarity that hurts not because it is cruel, but because it is true and you have known it for a long time without allowing yourself to say it. He did not stop loving Lena overnight, because real feelings do not end on command, no matter how much sense it makes for them to do so. But he stopped chasing, and in the stillness that followed the chasing, he began for the first time in 3 years to hear his own voice again, to feel his own needs again, and to remember that he was not only someone who gave love, but someone who deserved to receive it in equal and unhesitating measure. And as the weeks passed and he turned his attention back toward his own life, his work, his friendships, his quiet mornings, and his honest evenings, he noticed something shift in the quality of his days, a warmth and a lightness returning that he had not realized was missing until it came back. And he understood then that he had not lost Lena, he had simply stopped losing himself. So, my friend, if you have been running after someone who keeps moving further away, no matter how close you get, if you have been bending and shrinking and apologizing for the simple act of loving someone who cannot meet you where you are, then carry this truth with you gently but firmly from today. You cannot water your way into someone else's heart if the ground there was never prepared to receive you, and the love you have been pouring so faithfully into someone who cannot hold it is not wasted. It simply belongs somewhere else, in hands that are open and steady, and already reaching towards you without being asked. Stop chasing, turn toward the light, and let yourself bloom where you are truly wanted. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to Tales with English, where every story helps you learn English and learn life.